The essence of Carl Hess's case for America is that power should be returned to the neighborhoods, or at least to the towns. He also says he would not advise tax resistance as a course for anyone else unless we all decided to do it at once. Well, up in Maine, where they might regard Carl Hess as a dangerous radical, they're doing just what he suggests. It's the Great Maine Tax Revolt. At least a dozen towns of Maine have flat out refused to pay taxes due under a new state law designed to equalize the funding of education all over the state, money which the state would then give away to other towns. Well, today is the day the money's due, and the 12 towns are determined not to back down. They say, we won't pay, stay out of our affairs. There's already too much state interference in our lives. Some town officials could go to jail if they stick to their guns. Well, we were fascinated by this official form of tax resistance in places with names like Mount Desert, Cranberry Island, Georgetown, and Wiscasset. We decided on a place called Castine.
The best way to see Castine is to take a boat ride. The town sits on a spit of land at the head of Penobscot Bay. 1,200 people live here year-round. That number goes up a bit in the summer months. As you can see, the place is a feast for the eyes in any season of the year. Castine has not really changed much in a couple of hundred years. The gentle pleasures of rural America are still available to anyone who wants them. Castine is off the beaten track, so not too many tourists come here, and the locals want to keep things that way. Their biggest concern about this report was that too many people would find out about the place. They're very conscious of their history here. There's 147 historical markers. Castine is the oldest permanent settlement in New England. The people are impossibly Yankee, and as we'll find out, they take such things as inscriptions in the town green very seriously indeed.
I just want to interrupt this picture postcard tour to say something important about the government of Castine. The town brochure boasts that the people are the government, and it checks out. Of the 500 registered voters here, just about everyone's on one committee or another. The school, the library, health, historic signs, the sewer operating committee, the cemetery committee, and on and on. Indeed, the people are the government. It's enough to send a federal or state bureaucrat running for the protection of his Xerox machine and his filing cabinets.
It was Castine's tradition of running its own affairs that brought it into confrontation with the state. For example, Castine's Hospital, a pretty old frame building built 47 years ago. It brought most of the town into this world. Close it down, says the state. It's a fire trap. Rubbish, says Castine. It hasn't burned down yet. The Maine Maritime Academy, a state school for training merchant marine officers. This issue strikes nerves all over the country. As a state institution, it pays no town taxes, but uses all the municipal services. What's more, it's forever buying up more land and taking it off the tax rolls. Another thing Castine regards as an unnecessary intrusion by the state is the police force. Castine has one deputy sheriff and feels that's plenty.
There's a bill in the legislature right now which is going to make us have a full-time police department, which is another $50,000 a year. Well, our whole tax budget right now is only $180,000. So what do we need a full-time 4-man and a police cruiser and radios and all this for to catch some guy going through a stop sign? We have
That's John Vogel. We'll hear more from him later. It's assumed in this country that every state functions for the good of all of its citizens. It's also assumed that no master plan is going to make everyone happy. And here is where Castine and the state come truly adrift. On those two essential and planned elements of American life, taxes and education. The state asked all of Maine's towns to increase their property assessment. Castine was one of the few that did so. Next, the state told Castine, on the basis of that new assessment, to increase its education budget to $216,000. But, said Castine, in our 114-year-old 4-room schoolhouse, it only costs us $125,000 to teach our children and teach them well. Aha, said the state, send us the difference, $91,000. and will give it to some other town to upgrade its schools. Castine is a rich town and must share its wealth.
Well, for Castine, that was the last straw, equal at least to taxation without representation. Here they were practicing that Yankee virtue of frugality, and they were about to be punished for it by distant bureaucrats from the state capital. So they came here to Emerson Hall, the town hall, for a town meeting, the New England way of telling their selectmen, their local elected officials, how they wanted their tax dollars spent. And at that town meeting last May, they spoke with one voice, and their message to the selectmen was loud and clear. Don't pay the state the $91,000 it asked for. Those state bureaucrats, they said, had passed an unjust and illegal law, one worthy of civil disobedience, the kind of law that Castine's ancestors had fought against 200 years ago. And so important is this issue that people in these parts are calling it Castine's present to the nation's 200th birthday. That meeting, by the way, went even further. It instructed the town tax collector to not even collect the money that the state wanted. It was a gauntlet thrown right into the face of authority.
So when the town's property tax bills were sent out 2 weeks ago, tax collector Laura Hatch and town clerk Rebecca Gray deliberately did something they could well go to jail for. They left out the $91,000 the state demanded. The evidence is right there on the tax bills. Due Castine for education, hard cash. Due the state of Maine for education, a blank space. As I said, these people are impossibly Yankee. And they do believe, especially in this bicentennial time, that their rights have been invaded and that they are threatened by desolating judgments, much like those of King George himself. So we asked some of Castine's patriots to assemble down at the wharf one morning to state their grievances. There was Phil Perkins. He's a retired history teacher who now spends his days doing a little house painting and a little orating. If you visit Castine Cemetery, you'll find it full of Perkinses clear back to the Revolution. And Ken Eaton. The boatyard's been in the family for generations. He can fix anything that floats. Ken and his father are launching a boat that his grandfather built. He's also the harbor master and runs the snowplow in wintertime. And Spunk Hatch. Spunk and Phil Perkins are old school chums from that very same school they're using today. In the winter, he drives the school bus. Summertime, he grows strawberries, which he doesn't pick. You can, though, for 65 cents a quart. And John Vogel, at age 26, one of the 3 town selectmen. Born in Castine, graduate of that same schoolhouse and the Maritime Academy. He's a salesman for a chemical company. He's spending his vacation building a new house for his family. Like any other boy who grew up here, there's nothing he can't do with timber and nails.
We're just totally fed up with the state coming down and telling us what to do. You know, if they want to run the town, well, we'll get out and they can come down and run the town. That's the way we feel. It's just like, you know, the philosophy behind the bill we like, you know. Nobody's against equal education. The unequal taxing of the bill we don't like. But more than anything, it's the idea that the state comes down and takes control of your schools. If they take over the schools, they're taking over everything. What do we have left? So why do we have a town? Why do we have a town meeting? And why do we have selectmen, town manager, and a tax collector, and all these people? If they're coming down and telling us what to do. It's like 200 years ago, King George was telling everybody what to do, and we had a revolution. It's the same thing now.
Well, the bureaucratic argument always is, look, you can never go back to the good old days.
Yes.
If you really examine the good old days, they weren't so good. And what we're offering you is progress, better services, more responsible government. What do you say to that?
Stop it before it starts. Absolutely. If you could say it, for heaven's sake, stop it now.
It's bad enough to the way things go today, to have to pay the big bill for education. But when you have to take your money first and send it to Augusta, so they can turn around and send it back to you before you can spend it, it just didn't fit us right. That's all it was doing.
The thing that is bad and is very inequitable here is the fact that the basis for taxation is inequitable. The methods of assessment are not standardized. The variance between the various communities is so great that it gives the citizens are feeling that this is just simply unfair.
I've almost 70 years old, on Social Security, taking pills, raised a big family, and now my taxes are going up double. I can't stand it. I got a bedroom that isn't finished, just the bare boards, and I'd like to get it finished and some heat in it so that my heart stops in the night. Somebody won't find me froze stiff in the morning.
Supposing you paid all your money, in a few years the state might come down here and build you a new schoolhouse and build you a new town hall and a new library and police force and maybe even a new wharf. Do all these things. Don't you think it'd be a good thing for Castine?
No, I don't. I think we might as well go to New York or Boston or some other bloody place. No, we don't want that at all. Besides, we don't want a new school. We don't need a new school. We feel as though our four-room school up here gives them better education than a fancy six-room school or whatever you have.
You know, the one thing that you just said about the state coming in and building us a new school and building us a new hospital, but you've got to remember one thing. We still got to pay it.
Right.
And believe me, when the state funds something, it costs more for them to do anything, believe me, than it does a little town like this.
Right, absolutely.
The towns aren't running their own business anymore. And when this country was settled, it was settled by people that wanted to run their own affairs. And it's the same all over the country, and I guess in Washington, that the people don't have much to say anymore.
As we said at the beginning, today's the day the money's due. The towns in revolt have asked the courts to decide on the constitutionality of the new school financing law. The state attorney general says he's determined to collect those taxes. But everyone might do well to remember that people, not unlike those of Castine, brought forth the nation whose 200th birthday is now being celebrated.